do you trust Steve Kerr with the development of these young guys? I mean, that's kind of what always comes back to, right? Like, yeah, the veterans, he always loves to play. Ty Jerome, Anthony Lamb. He trusts those guys, and now Ty Jerome gone, he goes to Cleveland, so they can't get that. But what it comes down to at the end of the day is the trust in your head coach to develop the future of this team. And you would like to think that it is Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga, but Moses Moody last year was up and down of the G League. Now, he showed some spots, and I was actually very impressed with how he played in the playoffs, given his short sample size throughout the regular season. I thought, my goodness, like this guy coming in, hitting shots, defending LeBron, God bless him, he can only defend him so well. But I thought he did a hell of a job, all things considered. Jonathan Kuminga, I don't blame the guy for having 2 months of action in Andrew Wiggins' absence, playing pretty well, finding his role, and then it getting torn apart and ripped away from him. And then obviously him going to the Chronicle didn't help things, talking to CJ Holmes, voicing those frustrations. I get it. You're a young player. Probably not the best look. But it comes down to Steve Kerr and the trust level with those young guys. Do you trust Steve Kerr developing these guys, Evan?
No, but I also don't think it's Steve Kerr's job to develop players.
Really?
It's his job.
You don't think it's the head coach's job to develop the young players?
It's the head coach's job to win basketball games, which Steve Kerr...
Shouldn't you be able to do both, though? Like the good ones?
We saw them try to, and it didn't work. So,
I mean, Craig Popovich has been able to do it.
What?
Develop the young guys while also getting those older guys. Kawhi Leonard.
There was also a spot for Kawhi Leonard when he got there. Kawhi Leonard was a 4-year college player. He's a much more already developed piece. Like there's a difference between developing, in my mind, a complete project and developing a player that has already shown you that, in the Kawhi Leonard's case, for example, he averaged 13 rebounds a game in college. Like, he's a physical specimen. That, to me, is a very different situation than Jonathan Kuminga. Jonathan Kuminga is not in a place where he can get a leash and get run consistently unless someone is out. So Steve Kerr, to me, has done his job over the course of his time here in Golden State, which may potentially be coming to a close at the end of next season. His job is to win games. Like we saw, this last year was the first time he's ever lost a Western Conference postseason series. That, to me, seems like he's doing a pretty good job with the roster he's given. It's not his job to develop.
I vehemently disagree with that. I just think a head coach has everything under his command. If he's going to get all the praise, he needs to get all of the criticism, if you will. And the big criticism under Steve Kerr is what young player has ended up thriving. Jordan Poole, he helped win a championship. And guess what? We shipped him away. The one good young player that's helped us win a chip in this stretch. Jordan Bell, God bless him, didn't do it. Right? Patrick McCaws, if you will. Kevon Looney, I'll give you one. That was one. Okay. Kevon got some time. He was able to develop moving forward. I will give you that. And how
long did it take Kevon Looney to develop?
A long time. There was injuries and factors there. I get it. He was never the same player physically after that. What was it, the hip injury he came in with from UCLA, I believe it was. So yeah. He had to change his game in certain aspects as well there. Excuse me. But as it pertains to head coaches in the NBA at 888-957-9570, that's the question I'll throw out to you. Does the head coach have a lot of responsibility as it pertains to the NBA in developing young players? We're getting a lot of comments on the YouTube chat. Uncle Looney, are you really Looney's uncle? I would like to know that. He says it is not the responsibility of the head coach to develop these young guys. Listen, if we're going to give them all the praise, we got to give them all the criticism too. I think that's under the umbrella of a head coach, is to develop some of these guys. Are there certain coaches in the staff that are specifically for that? The Jama Malaleilas who moved on, the Kenny Atkinsons, if you will? Sure. But ultimately, it's Steve Kerr. It comes down to his plate. He has to put these coaches in positions to succeed as well when it comes to this development, if you will.
But I don't view not looking at him as a developmental coach or asking him to develop pieces as letting him off the hook. Like, he does deserve criticism, not for that. He deserves criticism for not winning games, for being a 6 seed, for being a team that was 1.5 out of the play-in this year. That's what Steve Kerr deserves criticism for. He couldn't find a way to get this team to gel the way he had previous teams. That, to me, is not so much as it is about the developing pieces as it is your top 3 guys, along with the rest of your starting 5, which dealt with a lot of injuries this year. Those guys could not help you win enough basketball games to be a top 4 seed. You were going to be a road team in any playoff series unless, of course, a 7 seed upset a 3.
I would say
that's what I would give Steve Kerr a knock for, or the fact that in the playoff series against the Lakers, that there were few adjustments in my mind made to get them to a victory. That's what he deserves criticism for.
He got outcoached by Darvin Ham, a rookie head coach. Absolutely. In that series, I believe. That Lonnie Walker move, not putting Gary Payton II on him, obviously lack of scoring there, and stuff like that in Game 4 when they ended up going up 3-1, the Lonnie Walker game, who's now moving on to the Brooklyn Nets, by the way. But I just think he was afraid to let the young players fail, Evan. Like, you got to let the young players fail if they're ever going to succeed in this league. He was so afraid early on in the season when they started struggling mightily to let these guys fail and give them some playing time. And I think it just paid ramifications later on in the playoffs, not giving minutes to a guy like a Jonathan Kuminga when it was so obvious you could have used it. But because he made a mistake here and there, because he didn't do this, because he didn't do that, you have to yank him out and you have to scold him and you have to let him sulk on the bench instead of empowering these guys and letting them fail by giving them more minutes early on in the season. That's just what I feel. And I think that is on the head coach.
I also think that if you look at a player...
Don't be afraid to fail is what I'm saying. Don't be afraid to let the young guys fail because every single vet will talk about failure leading to success going forward for them in their young careers.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but so Jonathan Kuminga against the Sacramento Kings, I forget which game it was, might have been games 1 or 2 in Sacramento. He comes in off the bench, same time Malik Monk does for Sacramento. Malik Monk hits 3 threes on him in successive possessions. That is failure. And it's an immediate failure, but in a playoff game, you can't afford to give up 9 straight points. Like, so you can't have that on your team at that time. That doesn't mean that Jonathan Kuminga can't learn from an experience like that, can't use it to better himself in the future. But if you're Steve Kerr and that guy's hurting you, well, then, yeah, I'm going to turn away from him. I don't think that's so outlandish to believe. Meanwhile, Moses Moody, I would look at him as a player that was ready. Doesn't that, in a sense, point to a properly used plan for him? If he comes in and succeeds, even though he hasn't necessarily played, he's ready for his moment, well then, if you're going to knock Steve Kerr for his lack of development or lack of faith in Jonathan Kuminga, shouldn't he then, by your logic, get credit for how ready Moses Moody was?
Well, I'll say this, that Moses Moody was ready because he was getting actual minutes in the G League. So that did, to that point, like we talked about going up and down in the G League constantly, he was staying ready and prepared. But Moses Moody's a completely different player to Jonathan Kuminga, in my mind. He's just an old soul. Everyone talks about it. He's very advanced for his young age. He comes out of Arkansas, who's obviously developed. Eric Musselman, obviously, friend of the station here, has worked with him in the past. So, yes, to that point, sure, Moses Moody, that's one, and we'll see moving forward. Is Steve Kerr going to trust him more next year? That's the thing I'm looking at. I would like to see more Moody minutes. I would like to see more Kuminga minutes. I don't think it's that outlandish to think that these young guys, you're going to need their contributions next year if you want to win a title. I actually feel confident in saying that. You're going to need Kuminga or a Moody to take a next step if you want to win a championship. 888-957-9570 if you agree with that. Michael Silberg on the YouTube chat. Kerr can't both develop young players and keep Draymond Green happy. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's fair. I also think, to me, the young guys, both last year and this upcoming season, there's a lot less young guys now, they're about helping you in the regular season, helping you when Andrew Wiggins has to randomly miss 2 months, if Draymond Green isn't able to play another 73 games, if Stephen Curry misses another month or 2 with a particular injury, if Klay Thompson has a potential setback. That, to me, is where the young players do come into play, and where, yes, you would hope that they'd be more equipped or developed to be able to get you through the 82. But in my mind, if Jonathan Kuminga is not a rotational piece next postseason, I won't be necessarily shocked because he hasn't had a lot of postseason experience. I think Kerr will give him another leash. I think Kerr will try to empower him. But if he doesn't immediately show that he can't get it done, there are other players in line that I think Steve Kerr believes can help him. If you feel like that's wrong, that's the improper decision, I guess I'll hear you. But to me, Spadoni, the young guys in any situation in the NBA are not about the playoffs. Unless, of course, you're hoping that they can be a cornerstone member of your franchise and have minutes to play. Is Jonathan Kuminga going to play over Andrew Wiggins, Klay Thompson, Stephen Curry, Chris Paul, Kevon Looney, and any other? No, he's not.
Why can't he be a Christian Brown for the Nuggets? He did that, right? He came in, stepped in, obviously. I know you're going to go to a 3-year player at Kansas. Yes, he was a little more polished coming into the league, but Kuminga had a year under his belt. He had some moments in the regular season. Why not?
Okay, so he should be a junior in college right now.
Okay. but he had actual legit NBA experience, which I think is far outweighs a year of that, a year and a half of that, whatever you want to say. It's on par with 3 years in college, I would say personally.
And if you don't have another player that can help you, that can impact winning, in my mind, then yes, I agree with you. Jonathan Kuminga should be given a runway. But the issue is that the Warriors are not only a win-now team, but they also have other players that I think could do a similar job to Kuminga that can give you that efficiency. Jonathan Kuminga is a guy that I think should be here in the future to help Golden State after the big three are done. If he doesn't help them now, I can't necessarily fault him for that, nor do I think it's Steve Kerr's job to put Jonathan Kuminga ahead of the overall goal of the team, which is to win.
Is it a head coach's responsibility in the NBA to help develop young players? That's the question we're talking about right now at 888-957-9570. That's Evan Giddings, E-Dog. I gave you that nickname, by the way. I didn't ever know if you liked it right when you first started working here.
No,
I gave you the nickname E-Dog. I just was like, you need a nickname. I'm giving you E-Dog. It kind of stuck, so I liked it. So I like to just toot my own horn. I gave him the nickname if you hear that. I'm Joe Spadoni, filling in for Bonte Hill and Joe Shasky. This is the Morning Roast. 888-957-9570 is the number. We're also streaming live on Twitch, on YouTube. Be able to search 95.7 The Game. Like, subscribe, all that. We are live and local all day right here on 95.7 The Game. July 3rd, day before 4th of July. What are you doing? What grade would you give Mike Dunleavy Jr. during this free agency period? You got Corey Joseph signing a one-year deal. He's a vet, probably your third starting point guard now with Steph and CP3 in there already. And then obviously Draymond Green is the big signing, 4 years, $100 million, a player option in that final year. From the 415 on the Comcast Business text line, Evan, NBA coaches aren't there to develop players. It's the player's professional responsibility to get better. I keep seeing that. From the 510 on the Comcast Business text line, it's the head coach's responsibility to give the young players a development plan. It's the player's responsibility to own and follow the development plan they've been given. So it seems like we're trying to put all the onus on the player and trying to take all the scapegoatness, if you will, off the head coach when I hear something like that.
Well,
Success and failure ultimately leads with the head coach, always, to me. So, Bob Myers, former president of basketball operations, always used to come on the station. He's like, listen, if I'm going to get all the praise, I got to get all the criticism, too. Like, you can give me all the praise for the KD thing, but for how I handled Jordan Poole, and I can't wait for the speak all whenever that happens, the Jordan Poole, Draymond Green situation, whenever Bob, or if Bob ever talks about that on his podcast, you got to get the criticism for that too, because in hindsight, that was handled horribly.
But also, Bob Myers is the same guy that will tell you flatly, it's about players. Like, yes, you can have you could have Phil Jackson out there as, I don't know, whoever your greatest head coach of all time is. I know Guru goes down as top 5 a lot, and it seems to rotate. But if you're going to have a great head coach, you also need great players. And I think it's easier to win with great players than it is to win with just a great head coach. I don't think that's a hot take. But
I will say, look at Eric Spoelstra. Do you think he maximized those guys?
And I'm glad you brought him up, because
I know the players when they were a little older. Yes, they've had a little more experience.
Without LeBron James or Jimmy Butler, Eric Spoelstra has not done much.
Okay.
No, like if you just go down the records from Miami Heat, where they've been in they have made the playoffs without either of those two guys.
That's something, though. I'm not going to scoff at just not they made the playoffs.
No, but to be a legitimate contender, to be in the place where the Warriors want to be, which is at the top of the mountain hoisting a Larry O'Brien trophy, you need to have great players. And to me, Steve Kerr is not responsible, at least this, and this is where I really wanted to go with this, because I think in principle, yes, it is the head coach's job to develop players, but we know not all situations are created equal. Right now, Ime Udoka is brought into Houston to develop those players. That's why they also go out and give a ridiculous sum of money to Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, players that represent two very different ideologies. My Lord. But he is there to develop that team. Yeah. Steve Kerr was never brought in to develop the Warriors. When he came in, they were already an established commodity. Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green were not at the Pantheon level that they are now, but that was a team that was ready to win, and he maximized them immediately.
I was going to say, did you think they improved, though? You can easily see the improvement from Mark Jackson to Steve Kerr. Did you not? That it mattered.
Yeah,
it did.
But that's why we still have conversations about Mark Jackson, because he helped develop the Warriors, but he was not the one that could help them get to where they eventually did. That's why they chose to move on from him.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. My family, Kerr is only interested in the big three and their legacies. Not sure about that. I think he wants another payday.
I also can't really blame him because...
Well, he's tied to their legacies. Why not?
Yeah, those big three, and you could even throw Iguodala in there if you want, are the reason why we look at him as a potential top 5 head coach ever. Some do.
No, absolutely. And and to your point overall about, you need guys. Yes, you will always need a top 5 or a top 10 guy to win an NBA title. That's a fact. You're not going to win with a bunch of no-names. And Jimmy Butler, listen, he is a borderline superstar. At times he has showed in the playoffs like this guy, like, wow, why isn't he doing this in the regular season? Because he only shows it for bits and pieces. That's why he's not, I would say, a bona fide superstar, if you will. So that's why I do give Spoelstra some credit. And I know you're not crushing Spoelstra and saying he's not overrated like some of these people in the text line. Erik Spoelstra is not overrated. He's one of the best head coaches of all time and one of the best coaches of my generation.